Come to podcast, come at you live here on OC Rock Radio. I'm Nick Neenan.
I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared, we got a good show today. A lot of football, a little bit of baseball, and we got some interesting college basketball news that we're definitely going to talk about a little later, too.
Oh, boy.
I know it involves someone you love.
Yep, my man,
Jared.
my main man.
Absolutely. So we'll tease you on that, though. We'll start with some college football first, as the top 25 rankings once again came out as far as the college football playoff goes. And we're going to talk about it. There's the Final Four is exactly the same right now. It's Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2, Notre Dame number 3, and Clemson number 4. So not much change in there. A little bit of change in the middle, but let's start talking about the 4 teams in it right now. Jared, I'll let you start. What do you think about the 4 teams being in? It's the exact same as last week.
It is, and because of the way that these 4 teams played last week, I don't really have any argument or any issue with how the committee chose to keep these top 4 teams in it. I think it's still a little surprising. Not surprising, but the fact that Georgia is still ahead of Alabama. I think a lot of people, just because it is Alabama and because they're undefeated and Nick Saban, people would expect them to still be number 1. But I think by the way, and we've talked about this on previous shows, the way that Georgia has played so far this year, not only offensively, but in my opinion, and I've said this before, I think they have the best defense in college football. I think they deservingly should get that number 1 spot right in front of Alabama. But no, those first two SEC teams, I think, are a lock to get up until they meet in that SEC championship. Notre Dame and Clemson, really, like I said, they've been on a roll, both with 1 losses, but the way that they've been playing recently, Notre Dame whipping on USC, and then pretty much rolling in the last couple weeks, not really having any close matchups, and then Clemson, kind of the same deal. So I have no problems with these top 4 teams. I know once we get down into that middle tier, those first teams out, I can already tell Nick has a look on his face and he's ready to go, chomping at the bit. So I'm gonna let it over
Yeah,
you.
well, I'll start talking about the Final Four first. As far as Georgia Alabama goes, like I've said before, these teams should go undefeated and should meet each other in the SEC championships. So that ranking doesn't matter as much as far as who's number 1, who's number 2. I thought there was a chance when Alabama beat LSU this week that that would possibly vault Alabama up. But LSU is kind of a fraud team, and I'll talk about them a little later as far as why they're even ranked anymore. So Alabama gets a normal win against an SEC opponent, and so does Georgia. So I'm okay with them staying. I'm obviously okay with Notre Dame as well. They get a nice win over Wake Forest, score a lot of points. The interesting thing about Clemson is, like I said last week, I didn't think they should be number 4. I don't still think they should be number 4. But it's not going to matter after this week because number 5 and number 6, Oklahoma and TCU, play each other, and that more than likely will vault one of those teams above Clemson. So although Clemson's still there, who does Clemson play this week? I'm not sure who exactly they play this week.
Clemson gets Florida State.
Okay, so Florida State. So exactly, that's not going to be enough of a matchup to keep them in the Final Four, especially if when TCU or Oklahoma wins. So that number 4 ranking won't matter as much. As far as the rest of it goes, I'm actually fine with it. I had my own rankings. I thought Michigan State should have been in the top 10. They end up at number 12. I did believe Miami should have moved up a lot after a big win against Virginia Tech. And as far as the rest of the top 10 goes, it's pretty solid. Now, I want to move to the middle of it, like I mentioned. I want to talk about 3 teams, Auburn, USC, and Michigan State, like I just talked about. Now, Auburn, what's funny is I actually wrote these down. I have the teams they've beaten and the teams they've lost to. Auburn has beat only, as far as a ranked team, number 16 Mississippi State, and they've lost number 4 Clemson and number 24 LSU. That's the recent rankings as far as college football playoff goes. Now, I personally think that Mississippi State and LSU should be ranked far lower than they are. So I'm going to take a lot of credit away from those wins. I don't understand why Auburn's number 10. Jared, can you explain to me why they moved up essentially for doing nothing last week?
No, I can't. I actually 100% agree with you in the fact that I think Mississippi State is a good team, was somewhat of a surprise team to begin the year. They're not
number 16.
Yeah, no, they're not number 16. And LSU has been so up and down roller coaster wise. They start the season, I believe, in the top 10, and then they just completely fall off. And then they have this miraculous win against Auburn in the last seconds to win by 1 point. So to me, that does not, in my opinion, those losses to Auburn, that does not catapult Auburn to be as high as number 10 as they are. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and I agree. I think the committee should have realized that LSU and Mississippi State aren't as high ranking of teams, aren't as good.
They shouldn't have put them in the rankings like they did. LSU at 24 is ridiculous.
A little bit. And so, no, I think Auburn should be more in the 15, 16 range, not number 10. I think that's too high.
Yeah, I think what happened was this was a little case of recency bias with Penn State and Ohio State losing last week. They almost felt like they had to rank them below a team that was kind of in that range before. Auburn was number 14 in last week's college football playoff rankings. They move up to number 10 because Penn State and Ohio State lost. I think those teams are still better than Auburn. So I still, even though Penn State and Ohio State lost and they were 6 and 7, they should have moved down to about 10 or 11, not to I think it's Ohio State's 12 or 13, no 13, and Penn State's 14. So they moved down 8 spots each. So it's interesting, and there's a lot of that in the middle, and I want to mention another team now. So I didn't think Auburn should have been number 10. USC at number 11. They have lost to number 3 Notre Dame. Everybody has besides Georgia. And they lost to number 19 Washington State, who I think is actually a little bit more underrated than I originally thought. The problem is their wins are against their best wins are against 2 unranked teams, U of A and Stanford. Now, I get that they were ranked when they played them, but right now Arizona and Stanford are in the rankings. How is USC vaulting up to number 11 after a win against a team that's now not ranked? That's another one I don't understand.
Yeah, USC moved up 6 spots.
It makes zero sense.
Which is almost a little more surprising than the Auburn move.
No, it is. Yeah.
Even though I'm a USC fan and I know you follow USC being in Southern California. Yeah, no, I was a little surprised by that, and you bring up a great point with their their schedule going back. But to talk about USC for a little bit, I think it's one of those things to where because USC started in the top 5 this year, it's kind of like, okay, the committee's kind of saying,
they're trying to keep them in.
Yeah, let's give them like one last chance. Not to say they're going to make the top 4, but it's like, all right, they have 2 losses. They are USC. It's kind of the same thing. It's like
they have one of the best players.
Well, this team is Alabama, or this is USC. When you just hear those names, it's kind of like they just automatically get a little bit of leeway in a sense. And I think that's what's happening right now because USC is not as good of a team as we thought in the beginning of the year. They're a good team, not a great team, and they do not deserve to be in the top 4 after they have those 2 losses. So even if they win out, even if they win the Pac-12 championship, yeah, they should get a good bowl game, but they're not going to get in the top 4. So to me, for them to move up 6 spots, I think that was one of the biggest jumps, one of the biggest surprises so far with this new ranking.
It's clearly them trying to keep them in.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And I feel like almost the Auburn pick is the same way. They're trying to keep a chance for Auburn to, if they were to beat, as I believe they play, if I'm not mistaken, Georgia and Alabama to end this season. So they will earn it if they win, but let them earn it from the 16 spot, right? Don't make them earn it in the 10 spot and then put other teams down below. Now, my biggest gripe as far as a team being a little high that should be lower is Michigan State. Now, Michigan State in the beginning of the year, I believe they were 3-9 last year. They were not good, so everyone thought, okay, this is going to be they're probably going to be 6-6, 7-5, maybe 8-4. Michigan State right now has 2 losses. Their only 2 losses to number 3 Notre Dame, like we've seen a lot, and number 25 Northwestern, who I think is actually Northwestern. It's a sketchy ranking, but they're still in the rankings. And then they've beaten Michigan, who I actually thought should have been in the rankings. I don't know why they bumped out. Number 20 Iowa and number 14 Penn State. They should be higher than USC and Auburn. I actually believe they should have been higher than Washington as well. I'm not going to put them ahead of a undefeated Wisconsin team. You don't put 2-loss team above Wisconsin, but I did think Michigan State actually should have been a 9. What do you think about the Spartans?
Michigan State, they're tough because their schedule has, to me, Michigan was a huge win. The loss to Notre Dame was, I guess, expected, but that was only in week 3. And then during week 3, I don't think we knew that Notre Dame was going to be this good that they are now. So that loss isn't as big of a deal to me. I think the bigger loss is the North.
Helps them that they lost.
Yeah, it is the Northwestern loss. I think that one right there kind of. It's just that one doesn't sit well with me. Northwestern.
It's like USC and Washington State in a way.
Exactly. Even if Northwestern is ranked, it's just they are not a solid enough opponent to lose to, in my opinion.
What was the score of that game?
They lost by 8.
Okay.
So they didn't get blown out. It was at Northwestern, so I guess you can give them a little more leeway. But that loss to me is pretty significant. So this upcoming week, Michigan State plays at Ohio State.
So they'll earn it if they, exactly.
This is their last chance to pretty much catapult into that top 10.
Besides, if they were, I believe they win this game, they'd be in the driver's seat to make the Big 12
They
championship.
would, because right now they're in first place in the East. And so if they beat Ohio State, that would pretty much catapult them and give them the edge in that sense. So this is obviously one of the biggest games of this weekend. And if Michigan State does do that, then we can continue to talk about them. But just like I said, because of that Northwestern loss, for some reason, that just doesn't sit well with me. And I understand, that they can somewhat overlook that if they do beat Ohio State, because their last 2 games of the season are against Maryland and Rutgers. Rutgers, awful. Maryland
Rutgers is
beat
terrible.
Texas to begin the year, and ever since then, they've pretty much fallen off.
And who's Texas? A 4-5 team?
Yeah,
Who
so
cares?
really, this is the matchup against Ohio State this week.
Yeah, no, they're obviously going to need to win it. This talk of that we're even talking about won't matter at all unless Michigan State wins it. But let's talk about, so what happens to Ohio State if they beat Michigan State? Here's a good question. Do Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan State have a legitimate chance to still get into the Final Four? Or is it essentially Wisconsin needs to win out and go undefeated?
Listen, as much as Wisconsin can go undefeated, their schedule to me
sucks.
Is so crappy that I don't care. They can go 20-0, and I'm still not putting them in the top 4. I don't care. I'll put a 2-loss team in Ohio State above Wisconsin.
Okay, I agree with you on that too.
Even a Michigan State, Wisconsin to me. Listen, next year you want to make it. Have a tougher schedule. Stop having these little cupcake games to get you to 10-0 and 11-0 and think that you're relevant and think people are going to talk about you.
The problem is that, so obviously they play the 6 or 5 opponents that they have in their own little division in the Big Ten, which are not good. None of them are good below Wisconsin. They're clearly the best team. The problem is you need to schedule Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan State during the season. You can't go play Purdue, and you can't play the worst teams from the North Division or whatever it's called. And that's what they did. They literally picked the easiest possible schedule in the Big Ten Conference, and I think their biggest win outside of conference play is BYU.
Yeah, listen, I'm just going to read you
nothing.
the schedule really quick. Their first game was against Utah State.
Terrible.
Okay, listen, you want to play a cupcake game, the first game of the season. I'm not saying I agree with it, but a lot of teams do that. You get one cupcake game to begin the year, right? Okay, and they play Florida Atlantic week 2.
That's Lane Kiffin's team. That's the only reason that was even talked about.
No, that's crap. Okay, at BYU, good win. Versus Northwestern, at Nebraska, versus Purdue, versus Maryland, at Illinois, at Indiana. Really, their toughest 2 games are going to be the next 2 weeks.
They do play Iowa. Yeah, they do.
This week they play Iowa, and next week they play Michigan. So
it's not going to matter, though. It's not going to be enough to get in unless they win the Big 12.
It's not going to be enough. If they beat these 2 teams, Iowa and Michigan, I think that gives them a little bit more relevance in this top 25.
Absolutely.
But because of their schedule, their past schedule, I don't think it's going to be enough to get them in.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So I don't know if the Big Ten will have a champion. Will have a guy in the Final Four this year.
Potentially not.
Because you look at these other matchups too. You have Miami, I believe, is playing Notre Dame this week.
Yes,
so
they are.
Miami will move up, or Notre Dame will just play them their stake. And Wisconsin, all they're going to be doing is beating 2-loss teams or 3-loss teams to get in. I don't think that's going to be enough. Like I said, Oklahoma and TCU, they're playing each other. They're going to probably play each other again in the Big 12 championship too. I don't see a way unless Wisconsin just starts destroying opponents. Like if they were to destroy Iowa and Michigan and then kill Ohio State, maybe you're like, okay, this team's legit. They're undefeated and they're going to get in. But there's too many matchups. There's too many good games these next couple weeks involving non-Big Ten teams to where I think there's going to be other teams getting in besides Big Ten. And who would have said that before the season? Right?
Yeah, no, not at all. To begin the year, the Big Ten looked like it was going to be a dogfight, one of the best conferences in college football. And right now, Ohio State 2 losses, Penn State 2 losses, Wisconsin undefeated. But there's just so much gray area with that Big Ten right now that I think it's helping obviously the SEC and the ACC because of that gray area.
Absolutely. So let's look at some of those big games we just mentioned, and let's analyze them and pick who we think is going to win. I know there's at least 3 top 10 big matchups this week. just like last week. I mean, last week you had, of course, the Bedlam game, which was utterly ridiculous, the final score. So there's a lot more. There's even more this week. So we'll start. Let's do Michigan State and Ohio State. That's number 12 versus number 13. Pretty even teams. I'm actually going to pick Ohio State to win this game. I think they'll get over their loss to Iowa. I think they'll want to come out and punch somebody in the mouth. I think they'll get a win. It will be close. It's also in Columbus, which is always a factor for Ohio State.
My point, Ohio State, because they're at home. If this was at Michigan State plays really, really well at home.
Both teams play really good at home. Yeah.
They do. So because it's Ohio State gets that home nod, I'm gonna give them the edge.
Absolutely, no, totally. And so that's a big game. Moving down the schedule a little bit. Let's see. Just look at Georgia and Auburn. That's this week as well. Like I mentioned, this is a make or break game for Auburn for sure. But what does this do to Georgia? Let's say if they were to lose this game to Auburn,
then obviously that just helps Alabama take over that number 1 spot. It depends on how Georgia loses, or if Georgia loses by 3 points or by a touchdown or something like that, do they still stay in the top 4? Do they move to the 5 spot? I mean, I think that they're still right there. Auburn's number 10, right? So in the committee's eyes, they like Auburn. Yeah, so if Georgia doesn't get blown out and they lose by a close margin, I think they're still going to be considered for that top 4. If not, they're going to be right outside at the number 5 or the number 6 spot. So really for Georgia, obviously you want to win. But if they lose this game and it's close, I don't think it's the end of the world for this team.
And when the line has Georgia at -2.5, now, talking what you just said, who do you think wins the game?
I'm going to go with Georgia.
Okay.
I think Georgia is the better team. Even though Auburn does have that very, very high up-tempo offense, they like to run and gun. I think Georgia's defense is going to be able to control Auburn offensively, and I think Georgia's going to be able to pull it out.
Yeah, I do believe Georgia will win as well. I think it will be a very close game because I think Auburn's offense it's going to be one of the toughest offenses that Georgia faces this year. Until they get to the Final Four, if they end up making it, and play like a team like Oklahoma or someone like that. But I'll tell you this, man, I kind of hope Auburn wins this game, though, because, number one, it's in Auburn. It'd be a big deal. They'd probably storm the field if they win. But they'd be going in that Alabama game, and it would really make that Alabama-Auburn game really, really good at the end of the season, having two teams legitimately have a chance to get in the Final Four. So I hope Auburn wins, but I don't think they will.
Yeah.
So let's move down. Iowa and Wisconsin, we were just talking about this as well. Iowa, they just seem to be this team that likes to upset teams. Although I'm going to pick Wisconsin because it seems like Iowa only wins the big games at home.
Yeah, Iowa is definitely, they get that one matchup a year at home. Yeah. They've had it the last couple years against Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. I'm going with Iowa.
Okay, interesting.
So
two upsets in a row.
Yeah, two upsets in a row. Listen. Wisconsin to me has not proven that they can beat a very good team. And they're going to obviously have a chance this week. But with Iowa riding that high of pretty much whooping on Ohio State last week, I think they're going to ride that momentum, and I think they're going to go into Wisconsin. I think they're going to put it on them. Interesting.
It's an interesting pick. Let's go Alabama and Mississippi State. Although we both think Mississippi State's not as good of an opponent, it's still 2 versus 16. I think Alabama's got this easy.
Alabama's got this one pretty.
There's no chance they lose this game.
There's not a whole lot
barring
of debate
an injury to 2 or 3 quarterbacks in this game, and Nick Saban collapsing on the sideline. They're not losing this game.
Alabama's going to take that.
Okay, Notre Dame and Miami, number 3 versus number 7. Catholics versus convicts, the rematch. They've been showing the 30 for 30 the last couple weeks on ESPN. Very interesting game. It's in Miami. I'm going to still have to go with Notre Dame, though. I think they're a legit force this season.
They are.
I do think their defense will be able to stop. I think Miami is a little overranked right now because they're undefeated and they'll end up losing this game to Notre Dame.
As much as I want to pick Miami because they're at home, the rivalry, I really, really do. But I think Notre Dame is going to edge it out. They're going to win by. It's going to be a very, very close margin. I'm definitely going to be tuning in. This is going to be one of the best games of the weekend by far. But no, I think Notre Dame, because of that running attack and because of that Heisman candidate that they've got back there, I think they're going to lean on him, try to control the clock, and I think they come out with a 3-point victory, a 7-point victory, something very, very close. But
that game will won't be a long game. It will be there's a lot of running in that game for sure. So that'll be a good, more like NFL type matchup. And a non-NFL matchup here is TCU versus Oklahoma. We saw
air raid.
Oklahoma State and Oklahoma doing their best impression to be Mike Leach. and the Washington State offense, it was like, I don't even remember the score, like 62-50 something.
Yeah,
I don't even remember.
Something ridiculous.
This is an interesting matchup because, like we said, it's 5 versus 6. More than likely, the team that wins this game is going to vault into the top 4. Who do you got, Jared? Who do you got winning this game?
I'm going Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is much more talented. TCU, this is kind of the same thing. The old
Horned
TCU,
Frogs.
the Horned Frogs. Every year they're always ranked. They always somehow towards the end of the year get themselves in the top 10, even in the top 5. But you always have to go back to their schedule. And who have they really played? Have they played anyone significant to make you think that they can beat a top-ranked opponent? And I think Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield, I think that's too much firepower.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Baker Mayfield's on a mission this season to not only get to the Final Four, but to win the Heisman as well. And I think he is the front runner after a couple bad weeks from Saquon Barkley. This is a good matchup. It's going to be high scoring. I don't like these kind of games as much. I was saying on Twitter that these defenses for Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, you almost don't think they deserve to be in the Final Four for how bad these defenses are. I expect the same thing from TCU. TCU also didn't play well against Texas last week, and although Oklahoma didn't as well, TCU had chances to kind of pull away, and they didn't. It took them a long time. So I think Oklahoma's a better team, and they'll win that game. Now, one other game I wanted to mention, and you don't even have to pick this because I think you just have a clear winner. Watch out for the Florida State-Clemson game because Florida State has obviously had an awful year this year. Maybe their one takeaway is that let's see if we can beat Clemson. Maybe they just go all out. Let's put our season on the line. Let's try to upset Clemson. It doesn't matter if Clemson's at home or they're away. I do think this Florida State-Clemson game will be closer than a lot of people think.
Really?
And I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State ends up pulling out an upset against Clemson because I just think this has been a rivalry for the last couple of years. You obviously had Jameis Winston with Florida State, and then you had Deshaun Watson at Clemson. A lot of really good talent. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State essentially tries to make their season for this game.
You're crazy. You smoked something before we started the show?
No, I did not. No.
Okay. No, there's no way in heck I'm going with the upset here. I'm sorry. Listen, this
What's the line? Clemson by 17?
17.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying, a lot of times in rivalry games, it's a little different. If you obviously UCLA beat USC when they were number 1 in 2006. There's always this chance of a team.
I get the rivalry thing. I do understand that. Florida State is playing with a rookie quarterback who so far has just looked blindsided. And I think now because he's had 5 or 6 starts under his belt, he's a little more prepared. But have you seen the kid? The kid weighs like 80 pounds soaking wet. I'm surprised he hasn't just been killed on the field yet. I don't see how Florida State walks into Clemson and comes out with a victory.
It's tough. It would be a lot easier prediction if it was in Florida State because then you have the crowd and people show up. But I'm just saying, in a rivalry game, the one game they could play good this season, it should be Clemson.
Walk out on that limb by yourself, my man.
That Florida game is not going to matter later in the season, so this is their one important game.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a break. On the other side, we're going to be talking about the very disappointing World Series. It's a week ago, so we're not going to talk too much about it, but we're just going to give our final thoughts on the World Series in the season. And we'll also talk about the untimely death of Roy Halladay yesterday, potential Hall of Fame pitcher. We'll give our thoughts on that. So, little baseball talk on the other side of this quick break. This is the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
Halladay is 1 strike away. The 0-2. A bouncer. Ruiz. In time! Roy Halladay has thrown a no-hitter. 3-2 to Springer. Back at the wall. It's gone. Springer stays hot. Here's a ground ball right side. Could do it. The Houston Astros are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
You've dreamed of this your whole life, this feeling. Is it everything you thought it would be?
It's everything and more, man. It's everything and more. It's one of the biggest steps of my life, one of the biggest accomplishments of my life. And right now I'm about to take another big step in my life. Daniela Rodriguez, you make me the happiest man in the world. Will you marry me? Will you marry me?
Oh my God!
Cover 2 podcast back here live with on OC Rock Radio. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And with a little bit of baseball talk, Obviously, if you follow the podcast, you know that we were very into this World Series, the Dodgers being into it. Last week, it finally ended on Wednesday night, Game 7. And unfortunately, the Dodgers, who we both were rooting for, didn't end up coming out with a win. And the Houston Astros were the 2017 World Series champions. As you can tell, my voice is a little somber because it took a lot out of me last week, this World Series. And for them to lose and the game really not to be that close the whole time was super, super disappointing. Congratulations to the Astros, though. What a series that was. The Astros deserved it just as much as the Dodgers did if they would have won. And a couple interesting things happened during the game and after the game. Jared, I'll let you get your thoughts on more of you, the more casual fan with this series, as far as what did you think about the World Series and what did you think about the Dodgers end up losing?
Yeah, this was probably one of the best played World Series that I can think of in a long time. The way that the series was just back and forth, two pretty much evenly matched teams, and I was hoping it was going to go 7 games. It did not disappoint. You have to give a lot of credit to the Dodgers, but yes, congratulations to the Houston Astros. And if you just think about it, from what Houston has gone through with the hurricane that pretty much swept through Houston and destroyed millions of homes, and for this, even though this cannot replace that, I think this is just kind of like a something to be happy about, something to take their minds off of all the devastation and everything that's gone on with that city. So for this Houston team to pull through and win the World Series for the first time in their franchise history, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
First time ever.
I think it's just a really fitting end to the year for this team, something that they can bring home to Houston and something that city can lean on to help rebuild. So a great team win, and I was so surprised by how well the Astros played. I guess the lack of offense that the Dodgers showed in this game, and
in Game 7 he's talking about.
Yes, in Game 7, and I think I didn't want to roast this guy, but Yu Darvish. You better go. You better go hide.
We're cooking Yu Darvish on the show today.
He better go hide for about a month. And if the Dodgers bring him back, he better go like 20-0 next year, because that's the only way you're going to make up for the travesty that you put forth in that Game 7.
Wait till I get
No. This is nothing. I'm just waiting. I'm setting it up for you.
Yu Darvish, I was so angry during the game because of Yu Darvish. I literally, like in the 3rd or 4th inning, I was like, the Dodgers don't even deserve to win the World Series now because we have a guy on our roster that clearly doesn't deserve a ring. Like, there was so much heat toward this guy. And it hasn't gone away, by the way, either. This guy, the Dodgers cannot sign him back. Okay, I'm sorry. The guy proved that the reason, why do you sign guys, Jared? Why do you trade for guys in midseason? So that when you get to the playoffs, in the biggest games, you have a horse. You don't have to rely on a 2 or 3 or 4 guy to pitch in your biggest game. Well, what did Yu Darvish do? In Game 3, when the series was tied 1-1, he gave up a bunch of runs and screwed over the bullpen and actually made the bullpen tired for a couple other games. And ended up obviously losing that game. Once the bullpen kind of got back into it after their break, after the Dodgers came back from Houston, Kershaw pitches a very solid, or no, excuse me, not Kershaw. Rich Hill pitches a very solid game in Game 6. The Dodgers win. All's well. What could go wrong, right? Yu Darvish, there's no way you could have him start worse than you did in Game 3 in the biggest game of the year. What do? You give up 5 runs and throw one right down the middle to George Springer in the 2nd inning. Unfreaking believable. There's no way you can bring him back because what you sign guys for is to help you in the World Series, and that guy proved that he cannot do that, and he's proven also with Texas that he can't pitch in the playoffs that well. Got lucky with LA in his first 2 playoff games.
Yeah, I think this goes back to my point and a question that I asked you on last week's show as to why the Dodgers would not think about starting Kershaw. And I understand he was on 3 days rest, and this is the 2 days rest. Sorry, and this is playing total Monday morning quarterback. But I'm just why would you not start Kershaw, let him go 3-4 innings, give your team a chance, because Yu Darvish clearly from the first pitch just did not have it. And I'm sorry, how many innings did he pitch? Did he end up going?
Less than 2.
Less than 2?
Okay.
He would have been done after the first. I'm sorry.
So you would have taken him out after the first?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the
See,
World
I think
Series Game 7.
Yeah, I think that's more of the case. It's not that Yu Darvish started. It's more of when Dave Roberts needed to take him out. This is the last game of the season. You do not have anything after this. You have to win this. I personally thought that you can give him, because the first inning actually wasn't that, George Springer hit a good pitch down the line, and then the rest of the runs were scored on error by Cody Bellinger that could have easily been out, and then a couple dribbled ground balls that ended up scoring runs in the inning. Yu Darvish didn't pitch that bad in the first inning. Yeah, he was letting guys on base. Yeah, he was getting behind the counts, but the guys weren't hitting the balls that hard off him. You're down 2-0. The Dodgers in the next inning come up. I think the 6 or 7 batter comes up, but it was Jock Peterson, and they had the bases loaded, and he strikes out, or whatever he did, okay? So you think, okay, we're right back in this game. If Yu Darvish can just slow down the next 2 innings, we're good, right? The Dodgers will probably eventually score because we were getting the McCullers as well. The problem was, once he started off that inning and let another guy on, that's when you really need to think as Dave Roberts, okay, this guy doesn't have it, we need to take him out right now. Because you had Kershaw, who came in the 3rd inning and pitched 4 scoreless innings. Was it 3 or 4? I don't remember. It doesn't matter anymore. He looked like the dominant Kershaw we see during the regular season, and we saw in Game 1. Or you could have brought in Brandon Morrow. They brought him in too late. They let him face Springer. And I think that was more of the case there. Not that Kershaw should have started, or not that someone else should have started, but that Yu Darvish should have had a way shorter leash than he already even did.
Yeah, no, I go back to, I would have started Kershaw. Even if he only goes 3 innings, 4 innings. Not to say that Kershaw would not have given up runs.
And that's not bad thinking either. That's not bad thinking.
Listen, we both mentioned it. It's Game 7. Mm-hmm. There's no game after this. You start him, you put your best pitcher out there, you give yourself an opportunity to get one step ahead, or at least, more than likely Kershaw was not going to give up, multiple runs, right? So I would have started him and then went reliever or brought in Darvish after that. I don't know. To start Darvish and that was, I think, a mistake.
And you bring up the point of kind of going a couple innings. The Dodgers bullpen was the strength in this series. It was the one reason why you could say the Dodgers in this very tight series would have a full advantage on the Astros. The Astros bullpen was not good up until Game 7 when they started using starters. But so the problem was, like I mentioned, and like what you're saying, is that the Dodgers needed to get to their bullpen and have a lead, any lead. They didn't give up any runs after the Darvish home run to Springer in the 2nd inning. The bullpen was dominant. It was Kershaw, it was Morrow, it was Tony Watson, it was Kenley Jansen for a couple. It was everybody. And the problem was more in that specific game that they needed to take Yu Darvish out earlier. It is Monday morning quarterback. You don't know if Yu Darvish came back in and said, hey, I feel really good. I think I'm going to do well. And Roberts just gave him a little long of a leash. The problem with arguing it is that was the Dodgers' way the whole season, and that was what had got them there. That's what they had won them 114 games up to that point, including the playoffs. So why go against the grain? And it ended up costing them. My bigger thing about the game was that they left 10 men on base. I actually believe it was even more than that, which would, if you actually think about it, means that in a 5-1 game, the Dodgers left 10 men on base, at least 10 men on base, which means there was a guy in scoring position for 5 different innings. So that means that the Dodgers had chances to win the game and just didn't come through.
Timely hitting.
It was a combination of Yu Darvish not pitching well, the coaching staff not going to the bullpen early enough, and the hitting being atrocious during the game with runners in scoring position. And that's what lost them the series. But I'm not taking anything away from the Astros at all. They are an unbelievable team. Either team could have won this World Series, and I think everyone would have been satisfied.
Yeah, no, because this World Series was so great and because it went 7 innings and so back and forth, you cannot take anything away from this Astros team. It's just for the Dodgers, it was just so surprising because up until Game 7, their least amount of runs scored in a game in this World Series was 3. Obviously, that Game 5, that crazy game, they put up 12.
Both were Darvish's.
The game before that, Game 4, they put up 6. So this Dodgers team we know can score, and it just came down to the timely hitting. And in Game 7, they did not have that timely hitting.
Too many opportunities to give them a pass on it, too. If it's, there's 2 innings where you guys had first and second, or 1 inning where you had bases loaded, that's different. But it was like 4 or 5 innings where they had guys in scoring position with nobody out or one out, right? You just need it, and it just, Bellinger struck out 150 times during the World Series, right? I think he struck out more times than he had at bats. I swear, he struck out more than he had at bats. Like, it was that bad. And Peterson didn't come up clutch like he did the rest of the games. Corey Seager struck out in the big situation. So it was a combination. It was a team effort to lose Game 7 of the World Series for the Dodgers, besides the bullpen, of course. And disappointing. But let's talk a little bit about this SI curse maybe possibly being broken up, by the way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Sports Illustrated back in 2014 published an article and had the cover of the magazine. It was a picture of George Springer, presumably hitting a home run. And it said, your 2017 World Series champs, the Houston Astros. This was back in 2014, when the Houston Astros were in their 3rd season of 100 losses, okay, in a row. This guy got it right. The Houston Astros won. George Springer ends up actually winning the MVP of the World Series. Totally deserved as well. We were both saying that. So, Jared, what were your thoughts on just the fact that this writer, this guy, got this completely right? And give us a little bit about George Springer and what his World Series was about.
Yeah, no, that's a little scary. That's like that doesn't happen. I mean, it's just pure luck. I'm sorry. Like, you can be a writer, you can say that. We can sit here and say, I don't know, the Detroit Lions in 2020 are going to win the Super Bowl, and they've never done it in their franchise history. It's just like, I mean, I know it's a different sport, but it's just, I don't know, I think that comes down to more luck than anything, unless this guy is just an avid Astros follower and he just knows everything about this team and just had a feeling that, in a couple years, once these prospects came up and this team came together, but then you can't account for trades and all that. It's just, it's very freaky to me.
No, well, and also, when you look at the prediction, Bregman hadn't been drafted yet.
Yeah.
Carlos Correa was, I believe, the number 1 draft pick in that draft. So it was just you're just guessing that this superstar kid ends up actually panning out. There's been a lot of number 1 picks that haven't panned out at all. So you're right. It was more of a guess than a prediction, but good for that guy. But talk a little bit about George Springer's World Series. 5 home runs. He totally deserved it in my mind. What were your thoughts on him?
Yeah, no, he did. And timely hitting. I think we've kind of used that phrase so much, overused it in a sense, but it's so fitting for Springer. And that's what this World Series was really about is, obviously we knew that both these teams had great pitching staffs and good bullpens, which is the reason why they're there. But it's also because of the hitting. And Springer, unlike the entire pretty much Dodgers lineup, Springer, along with Altuve, came out and showed why this Astros team is where they are, because their hitting has helped them get this World Series all along. 5 home runs in the World Series, that is pretty. Listen, if I get
record for a playoffs is 8.
If I get to Game 3 or Game 4 and I know that a hitter is just on, I'm not saying I'm gonna walk him every at bat like Barry Bonds. But how do you even pitch to this guy? How do you even give him an opportunity to give up 5 runs? Like, I understand if guys
the
are on.
problem was that Bregman's on deck, and then after that it was Altuve, and then after that it was Correa, and then after that it was Gurriel. The lineup was insane.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So no, he definitely deserved it. And then of course, to cap it off, you not only win the World Series, right after that you get on one knee,
Carlos Correa,
and you propose
to his wife.
Yeah, so I mean, talk about a storybook ending for him. He's had a heck of a week.
Justin Verlander also getting married to Kate Upton in Italy as well right after that. So
the Houston Astros are looking pretty good right now.
This is a good team. Yeah. Not only do they look good in the future, but they look good as far as their future other selves. Right, they have a lot of good wives on that team as well.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
So they got potential everywhere on that team.
Okay.
Real quick, just to do it. So this guy predicted 2014, 2017. Who is your 2020 World Series champ?
Oh my gosh.
We gotta do it.
I'm gonna pull one out right now. I don't know. You're putting me completely on the spot.
Should I go first?
Angels.
Oh, you're going the Angels.
I'm gonna go the hometown.
Okay,
I'm gonna go completely out of the box.
Is Mike Trout still on the team?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so obviously Mike Trout. Real quick, Justin Upton signed by the Angels.
Yeah, 5-year contract.
Great pick.
Yep.
Angels got a better lineup. I'll give my prediction. I think it's going to be the New York Yankees.
I had a feeling.
Not only is it the fact that it's the New York Yankees, that they have a lot of young talent, but I presume that maybe Machado or Harper is on that team by 2020, and that vaults them to that World Series title, or maybe another star pitcher. I think they'll get a big-time guy to go along with these young guys who already went to the ALCS or already went to Game 7 in the ALCS. We're literally one game away from playing the Dodgers. So I do think in 2020, with the addition of a big star, they get it. So a little multi-prediction.
Okay.
There. I think they get a big star. I think they win the World Series.
Okay, that's the Yankees.
God, I hope the Angels win the World Series in 2020.
Let's
That'd
do
be
it.
awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna save this. Look back on 3 years. The Angels win in 2020.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look like the genius over here.
Okay, there you go. So we'll see. Maybe we'll have to make a bet in 3 years.
Maybe.
See what happens.
Maybe.
Okay, so let's move on to much sadder news coming out of the Baseball World Day. We'll extend on this a little bit today. Roy Halladay died. If you're listening on another day, he died Tuesday of a plane crash. He was the only one in the plane crash, just playing into the Gulf of Mexico. Was only 40 years old. This guy only retired a couple years ago, from what I can remember. And he was one of those guys that was always seen as a super, super nice dude, super professional guy. That's what I've heard. I obviously didn't meet him or anything like that, but from what I've heard from some of the biggest writers and TV personalities in baseball, this guy was a great guy. Also a great pitcher, though. If you guys can remember, I think his biggest moment for me was when he threw a no-hitter in the playoffs against Cincinnati in Game 1. He was that dominant. He was, in some ways, the best pitcher in the league for about a 2 or 3 year stretch around 2010, 2009, 2008 when the Phillies were getting into the World Series and stuff. He was the reason they were getting there. He was their Kershaw, he was their Max Scherzer, and he was their Justin Verlander or someone like that. So great baseball pitcher, Hall of Fame potential, great dude. Sad day for baseball.
Yeah, no, very, very sad day for baseball, and I think the even bigger thing is just the type of person that Roy Halladay was. A lot of people that have come out and either tweeted or given their condolences not only mention him as an athlete, but just the man and the person that he was, the friend and the family member that he was, and I think that is the bigger story here, that people that were close to him are losing a friend and a brother, and not just an athlete. And I think sometimes that can get a little carried away. As we, obviously he is famous in a sense, or in the spotlight, because of his athletic ability and what he's been able to do on that baseball diamond, on that field. But for people who don't know him, just reading about the things that he did for his teammates and for his organization. I was reading an article on ESPN where it said after that 2010 game where he pitched the 20th no-hitter, he had watches made for the entire organization.
Yeah.
And gave them out, and it said engraved, I believe it said, we did this together, or something along the, you know what I mean? Just so the type of person that he was, I think that is the bigger story, and just someone that is going to be deeply missed by the baseball world and obviously the people close to him.
No, yeah, great guy. If you look at his Twitter now, I obviously didn't follow him on Twitter, but you're starting to see tweets. Very nice dude. I can remember one picture I remembered from seeing yesterday was a picture of him. Looked like he was at an amusement park. And a kid was wearing a Roy Halladay jersey, and the kid didn't know he was walking past Roy Halladay. So Roy took a picture of him pointing at the kid's jersey, like kind of funnily, and he said, this kid didn't know I took the picture of him. Hopefully he sees on social media that he got to meet like his hero today. So just that's the kind of guy we're talking about, And it always seems like these kind of guys end up dying in weird accidents or something like that. It's just. It's unfortunate. Obviously, when you're flying a plane, that's a very dangerous thing to do. Anybody could die on the plane any day, So it's just he's actually the second Phillies pitcher also from that team to die in a plane crash. Oddly enough, not that matters or anything like that, but the other one was Corey Lytle. And so, just sad day for baseball. Potential Hall of Famer. Won a couple Cy Youngs. He'll be right on the fringe there of getting in. So just baseball's missed a guy, you never know. You could have had an analyst out of him and stuff like that. He could have been a coach later in his career. And obviously his kids and his wife are going to miss him. Prayers to them, especially because losing a father that's 40 years old, that's not,
way too young.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not a good thing to happen at all. So, very sad day for baseball. Any last thoughts on Roy?
Yeah, no, I think like you mentioned, not only his family, but he could have been a coach, a little league coach, and analyst.
Yeah, exactly.
There was so much more for him to do. He was so young at the age of 40, so he would definitely be missed.
Yeah, no, totally. So sad day for baseball in that end. The offseason will move on. We'll talk more about baseball as the year goes on to see some of the big trades and stuff like that. But the World Series was great. Just wanted to extend on that one more time. What a great World Series that was. And hopefully it's just like that next year as well. And hopefully the Yankees 2020 win the World Series. We'll be right back at the Cover 2 podcast. We'll be back with a little Do You Care, a little UCLA edition of Do You Care.
Oh, boy.
Coming up next.
Silverberg tied up along the goal line. Kings take this away. A potential 3-on-1. Martinez trailing the play. Brown puts it across. Shot, score! Kings win in overtime.
Well, that was Nick Shore that just ripped that pass up into the top corner, and I'm telling you, there was no chance for Ryan Miller. This shot was as perfect as it gets.
Rich, some surprising active news today involving star running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Leonard Fournette. He is officially out for today's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm told he broke a team rule and is now inactive. And this is all about Doug Marrone, the head coach, establishing a culture. No one is above his rules, and that includes the best player on their team right now.
LiAngelo Ball could be in some serious trouble. If standard practices are applied, Ball and the 2 other UCLA basketball players arrested Tuesday in China under suspicion of shoplifting face between 3 and 10 years in prison if convicted, according to Chinese lawyers who briefed Yahoo Sports.
We're back here on OC Rock Radio, and Jared, do you know what time it is right now?
What time is it, Nick?
Jared, it's time for Do You Care? Time for Do You Care,
Nick
everybody?
is fired up for this segment.
This is a good one. This first question, Jared, I cannot wait to ask you. I will chime in a little bit. So there's a little weird, a little different dynamic here for Do You Care to start it. Then we'll go back to normal. But Jared, you ready for this one?
Throw it at me.
Do you care? You sure I don't want to shoplift it at you?
Oh, already. Taking shots already.
Okay. Let's get to the question. Jared, do you care that LiAngelo Ball and 2 others were arrested in China for shoplifting?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I can't even keep a straight face when I say this. This is mainly headline news because one of the Ball family members, of course, had to be associated with this. I cannot wait to hear LeVar Ball's response and reaction to this. Can't wait. But
you know
for
what he
those,
almost did yesterday? He almost went out against his attorney's, against his lawyer's wishes, and almost put out a statement before he got to talk to his lawyer. His lawyer's like, no.
Yeah.
So he almost said stupid stuff last night.
No, for those who don't know, LiAngelo Ball and 2 other UCLA players, were in China. I believe they have their first exhibition game. It's either this weekend or sometime this week, very, very soon.
Play Georgia Tech in that
Yes, and so they're in China, and they get arrested for shoplifting. Well, guess what?
Nice job.
In China, if you get arrested for shoplifting, not only, you pointed this out to me before we began this segment, does China have a 99.9% conviction rate.
Yep.
But these 3 players were also potentially facing 3 to 10 years in jail. Are you kidding? All three have been bailed out, and I am pretty sure they're not going to be playing in this game. If they do end up playing, I think that's really, really poor on this coaching staff, because I would want to send a huge message.
No way
These kids, in my opinion, would be suspended at least until league play, and probably into league play as well. This is a big deal. Listen, you're a college student. Do you know what they were actually caught stealing?
No, I don't think that's been reported.
Was it food? Was it? It doesn't really matter what it was. The fact that they were caught stealing in the first place is pretty pathetic. You are with the school. You're traveling with the school, which means if it was food or anything like that, you can go to the coach and say, hey coach, we need money for food, or you know what I mean. It's just, so I'm not saying it was food. I don't know if it's been reported on what they did actually steal, but no, this is a big deal. And like I said, not just because it's one of the Ball family members. This is not a good look for UCLA. It's not a good look for these players. And it's just a bad way to start the year. We haven't even played a minute of college basketball yet, and already UCLA is in trouble.
No, totally. And so why don't you actually look that up really quick? I'll just say a couple more words about this whole scandal. Look up to see if they've said why they shoplifted. But no, this is ridiculous. I mean, if you talk about a way to get heat off Jim Mora after their performance against Utah last week. Talking about the football team, but you go to these other countries, and these countries like China and like North Korea, they're not the same as ours, guys. You can't go over and do stupid things like that. And just with shoplifting, these people are working hard for a living, and obviously there's a lot of people that work in harsh conditions in China. So I'm assuming if you're shoplifting is someone that's worked very hard for what they've made or what they've done. And that's why I think the Chinese government takes this so seriously. But UCLA has to take this incident seriously, and I think you're right. I think these guys need to get suspended for a long time, not just a couple games and then they come back to play U of A. No, there needs to be a stern suspension. I mean, I wouldn't be totally against having these guys suspended for the whole year, to be honest. I know it's a little harsh, but it's got to be something big because these guys did a really dumb thing. And it looks bad on the UCLA program. It looks bad on the UCLA as a school in itself. And all three of these guys are good players as well. The other two, Jalen Hill and Cody Riley, two other very good basketball players as well, two other 4-star recruits, along with LiAngelo Ball, who I believe was a 4-star recruit. LiAngelo Ball obviously getting the headlines. These are good players for UCLA. So you almost want to set an example for these guys. Basketball's trying to expand to China. There's apparently 100 million Chinese fans, NBA fans over there. So this is a good thing. But when you got guys going over and doing dumb things, it puts a damper on it, and it makes everybody look bad. It makes basketball look bad. It makes UCLA look bad. And it makes, obviously, these kids look bad. Did you find anything on the front as far as the...
Yes. Okay. So these three...
Oh, here we go.
Knuckleheads.
Here we go.
Were reportedly caught stealing sunglasses from the Louis Vuitton store.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really stupid.
A little bit, huh? I guess it's so bright in China that these fools needed to steal Louis Vuitton glasses.
The smog's so bad there now that they had to put sunglasses on.
Yeah, because I don't know about these other two, but at least for LiAngelo Ball, his dad, and that family doesn't make enough to where you can't buy him a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah, so by the way, did you know what LeVar Ball was going to be? He's headed over to China anyways to go over there. But so what do you think he's more concerned about this weekend?
Oh, I'm sure he'll come out and say, "Oh, these boys, they didn't do much wrong. It's not a big deal. They're going to be fine. They're going to get off on these charges, and then they're going to come back and UCLA is going to win the championship." That's where he's going to go.
And then he's going to open up his 2 pop-up shops in
exactly.
Shanghai and Beijing.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. And then LiAngelo's going to lead this team. They're going to win the championship. He's going to get drafted by the Lakers. Top 5 overall. Deflect, deny.
We were talking about just in the last segment about the World Series, and in 2020 we were guessing, guys. LeVar Ball probably thinks in 2020 the Lakers are going to win the championship, right?
Of course, why not?
Yeah, guess it.
They're going to win every year for the next 20 years.
You'll love this joke too. And real quick, we'll go back to normal. Do you care? Right after I say this, but I saw someone say, "Oh, LiAngelo Ball potentially getting arrested for shoplifting is going to really hurt his chances of making the Chinese league." So,
wow.
Because LiAngelo Ball isn't that good of a basketball player.
Wow.
Okay, Jared, why don't you ask me the next question? We'll get back to a normal Do You Care?
Yeah. Sorry, we're a little off topic there, but
100%.
Of course, when we're talking about anything with the Ball family, you never know.
Got to get it in.
Nick, do
ballers.
you care that another kind of player that has been in trouble in recent years, Mr. Josh Gordon, has been reinstated by the NFL?
I do care because I still think this guy's really good, and he came out in an article, I believe it was GQ, where he said that he's finally starting to admit that he was doing drugs and was drinking before games. That was a problem with him in the past, was that he was always lying. So to see him progress, and then now he's telling the truth, he's being honest, he's saying everything, he's leaving everything out there. I think this is officially going to be the return of Josh Gordon. He's going to return to the Browns. Maybe this is the first time the Browns are solid in a while. Maybe they'll be good again with Josh Brown. Maybe that will help these quarterbacks having one of the best receivers in the game, because I still do believe he's one of the best receivers in the game. So, yeah, I do care. Good for Josh Gordon. I hope he finally has gotten the help that he needed, and I hope he's good for Cleveland. I hope he ends up on the Cardinals in a couple years. Jared, do you care that Leonard Fournette was benched last week for a violation of team rules by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
No, I don't care. This is exactly what's going to happen to you if you don't show up for a meeting. Leonard Fournette did not show up for the annual team pictures. And listen, I don't care if you're a rookie or not. Like, you should know better. We're in week 10, week 11 of the NFL season. To me, you're not a rookie anymore. Like, you've kind of gotten a rhythm, a routine. I'm sure the team and the coaches and everyone gave these players multiple warnings and saying, hey guys, this is what time the meeting is. And he still, for whatever reason, chose to not show up. So I actually applaud the Jaguars for not playing him and saying, hey, listen, we understand that you're a first-round draft pick, you're a stud, but we're not just going to let you get by with this, because then any other player is going to think that they can just miss a practice or in a sense, do what they want and get away with it. So good job by the Jaguars for suspending him or benching him for one game. Hopefully he learned his lesson. Obviously the Jaguars are going to need him if they want a chance to win that AFC South. But just don't be an idiot, man. Show up. You're a professional now. This is your main job, right? It's not like you're in college where you have class and you have to juggle all this stuff. Your main focus is to play football. So you should be in the facilities at all times, and he should have known better. So bad choice on his part. Nick, do you care that the LA Kings beats the Ducks in the SoCal rivalry last night?
Freeway face-off, yeah. I do care, because the Kings are off to an amazing start this season. 11-2-2 to start the season. That means 11 wins, 2 losses, and 2 overtime losses. They are second in the West in points. They are tied for second in the NHL in points. This team is for real. And a lot of people didn't have them in the playoffs at the beginning of the season, but I do think they're a for real team. They're really using their offensive weapons more than they used to. They're relying more on offense than they are on defense, taking a lot more slack off Jonathan Quick and net. Jonathan Quick's still one of the best goalies in the league. But I want to talk about the Anaheim Ducks a little bit, because they are now 6-7-2. And they are now lower in the Western Conference Division. They've been dominating the Western Conference the last couple of years, if you can remember. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year against Nashville Predators, a couple games away from being in the Stanley Cup. But this team is hampered with injury. They already had lost Ryan Kessler for a while to hip surgery in the offseason. They lost Cam Fowler, who should be coming back soon, but they haven't had him for a long time. And they had Patrick Eaves with another issue. He's been in the ICU recently, just got out of the hospital. So, and then they finally, to have the kicker, their captain, Ryan Getzlaf, is now going to be out 2 months with an upper body injury. So the Ducks are really hampered, and this could be the year, one of those rare years where the Ducks don't end up making the playoffs this year because they've been so hampered by injury. But the Kings, they're taking advantage of that, and they're running the Pacific Division for sure this year, even with the MVP, Connor McDavid, with the Edmonton Oilers in that division as well. I expect the Kings to go far this year, and I expect them to be a Stanley Cup contender. Jared, do you care that Eric Bledsoe was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks?
I do care, and while I'm happy that this is over, this has actually been going on since the offseason, back during the NBA draft, when Eric Bledsoe had originally requested a trade. Back in last season, the Phoenix Suns, they pretty much sat down Eric Bledsoe for the last 15 to 20 games of the year, saying that it was soreness in his knee for their reasoning for not playing him. Really what it was is the Suns were trying to tank, and they didn't want to win games. So they just said, oh, yeah, he's got some soreness. We don't want to hurt him. We're not going to make the playoffs, so we're just going to save him for next year. Obviously, Bledsoe did not take to that too well. And along with that, and along with the fact that this team is very, very young, Bledsoe, being 27, so he's pretty much in his prime right now, wanted an opportunity to play on a better team. I totally understand that. I get that. When I played sports, I was a competitor. You want to win. You never want to lose. But I think this is an instance where the athlete was able to pretty much control the situation, because eventually the Phoenix Suns gave in. And fortunately for them, they actually got a lot back. They were able to get from the Bucks. They were able to get Greg Monroe, a kind of a center who's not really big offensively, but he's a big body guy. Something that I think the Phoenix Suns have been lacking. They're more of an up and down team, so now they have that big inside presence, defensively at least. They also get a 2018 protected first-round pick and a 2018 protected second-round pick for Bledsoe. Yeah, I think that is a lot. I did not expect the Suns to get that much in return for Bledsoe, but good for them. But like I said, I think this is another instance where the player was able to control the situation. And while I do think, players should obviously want to like where they play, if I'm the Suns, if Eric Bledsoe, if they think he's a good enough player, you say, hey, listen, man, we need to find a way for this to work. We're not just going to trade you because you're not happy. And I think that's what happened. The Suns pretty much gave in to Bledsoe's demands eventually. And they said, hey, all right, you're not happy. Let's see what we can do. And, luckily, it seems like it worked out for both parties. Bledsoe seems happy that he kind of gets a fresh start with the Bucks. I believe he's going to play this week. And the Phoenix Suns get some extra draft picks. And, we'll see what they can do with that. They're a very, very young team. So I don't see them, being contenders, at least for a couple years. But at least they've got some more draft picks to work with.
2020 champion for sure.
2020 champion. We're gonna say that for every major sport now. 2020 champion. Nick, final question of the segment. Do you care that the finalists have been announced for the MLB end of season awards?
Yeah, I do care, because I always like to see if one of our teams, the Angels or Dodgers, can get and win awards. Dave Roberts up for Manager of the Year for the Dodgers. Cody Bellinger, Rookie of the Year. No MVP. A lot of people thought Bellinger might be MVP. And then in the AL, you of course have Judge and Altuve, a big race for the MVP. Also Kershaw, he's up for the Cy Young. Him and Scherzer are kind of the favorites in that too to win that. But the Gold Gloves came out yesterday, and the Angels won 2 of them. Andrelton Simmons, who everybody kind of knew was a Gold Glove shortstop, but the good one, Martin Maldonado, catcher, won the AL Gold Glove, which means he's essentially the best catcher in the American League. So the Angels, they signed Justin Upton. They're bringing back a lot of the guys from last season. Of course, they get Mike Trout hopefully for a full season. Watch out for the Angels team, but good for those guys, and it's always exciting seeing who can win awards and who ends up being MVP at the end of the year. All right, we'll be right back on the Cover 2 podcast. Final segment of the day, NFL segment coming up next.
I definitely believe I'll play this year, but I can't just sit here and say it. I have to continue to put the work in and show eventually I can get back to the player who I was.
It's sad for Deshaun Watson. I mean, as you said, this guy was having a record-setting rookie performance. But the thing is, I'm going to tell you this. Deshaun's likely to be okay. I mean, we've seen these kind of knee injuries really, really derail somebody like RG3's career to some extent. But on the other side of the equation, there's guys like Randall Cunningham who tore their ACL, who were both run-pass option type guys, running threats, passing threats. And Randall Cunningham came back to be able to fulfill all that potential, all that hope. So Deshaun Watson's career at this point, I think, still is bright. It still is shiny. What's over is his season. And sadly for the Houston Texans, so is theirs.
Well, this is just an interesting story that just broke. The Indianapolis Colts place Andrew Luck on injured reserve. He is out for the year.
Final segment of the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Jared Smith.
I'm Nick Nina.
And Nick, it's time for a little NFL talk. Going to start off with some injuries first.
A lot of injury news.
A lot of injury news, and then end with a little some predictions for this week's NFL games. Little pick'ems. We're going to start first with Andrew Luck, designated to the injured reserve. There was a lot of talk at the beginning of the season that he was going to miss, maybe the first month, and then he was going to be able to come back and more than likely play the rest of the year. That obviously did not play out. He had a couple setbacks with that right throwing shoulder. And so the Colts, instead of, wanting to rush him back and, potentially make a late push for the playoffs, which isn't going to happen, they have decided to shut him down for the entire year and hopefully get him ready for next season. Nick, your thoughts?
I think he was going to be out the whole year, the whole time. I think they just tried to...
You thought that was a bluff?
I think it was a bluff. I don't really know why they did it, but I just think it was a bluff. Like, this guy clearly he wasn't throwing. If you're not throwing the football in practice, you're not going to play. It's just not going to happen, So this is a weird thing. I don't know what the Colts are doing, because I don't know if they want to get a quarterback, maybe one of these quarterbacks from college, or maybe if they want to trade for Or maybe go for like a Cousins. I don't know. Maybe they know something that we don't. There's been rumors that Andrew Luck's career might be on the line with this injury as well.
Really, the $100 million quarterback.
Yeah.
On the line,
so maybe they're thinking, okay, well, if his arm doesn't work out, maybe we'll draft a quarterback. We'll trade him if it doesn't work. Maybe a little Patriots action where you have like two guys. Obviously, we saw Garoppolo traded to the 49ers last week. Maybe they do that, but I don't know. It's interesting, little dynamic here with the Colts.
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, I think it's the right decision. Listen, you pay this guy $100 million. He's your franchise quarterback. This team is, not going to make the playoffs this year. They're not really going anywhere. So it makes total sense to shut him down. I agree, though. Who knows? Maybe they really did think that he was going to be able to come back this year. I think the tough thing is it's because it was his throwing shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
If it was his non-throwing shoulder, I think he could have maybe been able to deal with the pain a little bit more. But the fact that, that shoulder, I'm sure every time he threw for a throwing segment, whether that was, a timed 20-minute, 30-minute throwing segment, or actually, all right, you're going to throw 40 to 50 passes, his shoulder just had to be sore every time. And it didn't seem like it was progressing in the way that the Colts thought it would.
Yeah,
so, listen, the smart move is shut him down, get him ready for next year, give him the full offseason to, in a sense, continue to recover, because that's been what he's doing all year long, and hope that he comes back next year. If he's not ready for the beginning of the year next year, I think that's when this organization has to start talking about, okay, is this still our guy? Do we need to restructure his contract? Because, listen, they're forking out $20 million to this kid right now, and I'm not saying he's not worth it. But when he's not in the field, he hasn't been on the field for over a year, and that's a lot of money and moolah to be forking out to a guy who's sitting on the bench. So at some point, I think it's a smart decision now. But if he's not ready by the beginning of next year, I think this organization needs to start thinking about, okay, maybe we need to draft another quarterback or bring someone in. Because, listen, I mean, how many losing seasons do you want to go through without Andrew Luck on your team?
No, I know. That's the true thing. And they have Jacoby Brissett, who's proved to be a pretty solid...
He's done really well.
Pretty solid quarterback, so maybe that's the guy. He's still young. Or I could see them drafting like a quarterback in the 4th or 5th round, something like that. Maybe not. You're not drafting Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold, because then you have a competition. There's no reason to do that. But maybe you draft a guy later and just see if it works out. A little hope for a little Dak Prescott magic, maybe later in the rounds, or maybe Russell Wilson magic. You don't know. So, interesting little dynamic there with the Colts. Moving on to a quarterback that was not hurt and got hurt last week in practice. Deshaun Watson, out for the season. It's as plain as that. Torn ACL. This is devastating for not only the Texans, but for the NFL in general. I mean, this guy, he goes nose to nose with the Seahawks and their defense a couple weeks ago. They end up losing on the losing end, but it wasn't his fault. The guy was dominating the league. He was probably going to win Rookie of the Year, and all of a sudden, torn ACL, throwing a toss out of the backfield.
Non-contact injury.
In practice. Terrible. What are your thoughts on Deshaun?
No, completely terrible. And up until his injury, he was having a comparable season, if not even better, than Dak Prescott's rookie season from last year. Yeah. The kid was just blowing everyone out of the water. And I think the thing that impressed me the most is anyone that knows the Texans head coach Bill O'Brien, he's an offensive-minded coach. He calls his own plays, and his playbook is so in-depth, and it is so large that it's very, very tough, especially for a rookie, but even for a veteran to have to come in and learn the system. But for a rookie to come in year one and pretty much take the reins over after the first week of the season and to do what he's done so far, it sucks for this season. The Texans are playing really, really well to go along with that defense. But now, you know what? At least they have a bright spot for the future. And you just say, hey, listen, he's going to have this whole offseason to recover. We think that we have our quarterback for the future. And in the NFL, as you well know, that is the mainstay. You do not have a quarterback, more than likely you are not going to succeed. So Deshaun Watson is definitely a bright spot for this team. It's a bummer that he got injured, but at least hopefully if he's healthy, he can come back next year and continue on the fantastic year that he's had so far.
To that point, when you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win. Tom Savage, they ain't going to win with Tom Savage.
No.
Tom Savage is terrible.
You can pretty much kiss their playoff hopes goodbye.
Plus they're missing Watt anyways, and they're missing Merciless as well. So not a good thing. This sucks because it's non-contact injury. I'd feel way more appropriate with this if it was in a game.
Yeah.
But it was a toss in practice.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. I mean, it's ridiculous. I remember a couple years ago, Carson Palmer jumping up in the pocket against the Rams and tearing his ACL. It's just This stuff
a freak injury.
That's what I'm saying. It's terrible. So it's not. I remember Adrian Peterson moved his foot in the turf bad. It's not good. It sucks for the NFL and it sucks for Deshaun Watson and the Texans because I'm obviously more of NFC guy as far as following teams and wanting teams to lose, but you don't care about the AFC as much when you're an NFC fan, and to see a guy to go down that you're kind of cheering for and hoping that he beats other teams, it's never good. And obviously anybody with them on their fantasy team, find a new quarterback.
This is bad for the NFL as a whole.
100%. Totally.
This guy was a great person. You could see it seemed like every week, if not every other week, there was a news story about what he was doing for the organization, helping out janitors and giving away game checks to people. This guy is just a down to earth, straight up guy. And Dabo Swinney's looking really good right now. During the draft process, before the NFL draft, Dabo Swinney pretty much came out and was directly talking to every NFL team and said, if you pass up on Deshaun Watson, it's going to be the biggest mistake that you have done. They pretty much said that he's going to be the best quarterback in this draft. And up until he got injured, he was definitely proving Dabo Swinney right.
No, totally terrible for the NFL and good for Dabo Swinney being right. I mean, the guys turned that program around for sure at Clemson. Yeah. They don't deserve to be in the top 4, but whatever. Okay, so to move on. One quick another injury news. This is a good injury though. Teddy Bridgewater is coming back.
Yes.
That's another guy. I believe was that torn ACL as well.
Not only torn ACL, I believe it was torn ACL, torn PCL. I mean, his knee was jacked up. The fact that he was even able to, recover from that and be able to continue his NFL career is kind of a thing in itself, a great thing to talk about in itself, because a lot of people weren't even sure, if he was going to be able to walk right again. His knee was so jacked up. No, it's great to see him back, activated off of the IR, PUP list. So it's kind of a good and bad thing because they did have to deactivate Sam Bradford to the IR. He had arthroscopic knee surgery, so he is shut down for the rest of the year. So Teddy Bridgewater will more than likely be the backup to Case Keenum, I believe. So we'll see if Bridgewater actually gets some playing time. Not sure if they want to throw him into the fire. I think they want to get him some more practice time for a couple weeks and make sure that knee is as healthy as possible. But I would love to see him back on the field.
No, same with me. I think. What do you think the over/under on him eventually starting this season? I do think he'll eventually start this season.
I do. This Minnesota Vikings team is in the hunt for not only the division but for definitely a wild card. So I think Teddy Bridgewater, in my opinion, is a better quarterback than Case Keenum. I think it really just comes down to how confident he is in that knee and how confident this team is in putting him out there again. Because listen, this isn't I don't want this to come off as a negative, but if Teddy Bridgewater goes out there, that defense is going to be hunting for him, and it's not a bad thing. It's just it's the NFL. It's a football contact, hard hitting sport. So there's always risk for injury or re-injury in this case. And I hope he can stay healthy and I hope he can get back on the field because Teddy Bridgewater is a really, really good young quarterback, and he was getting better and progressing every year up until this injury.
All right, let's do pick 'em real quick. We got about 2 minutes to go on the podcast, so we got to do a little quick pick 'em here. Let's get this first game up. Oh, Cardinals Seahawks. I like this one.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna pick Seahawks.
You're not going to go with the homer pick?
No, pick Seahawks. I actually might be at the game, too. But if I'm at the game, they'll win.
Is it going to be another 6-6 tie?
Hopefully not. I'll be disappointed. I want my money back.
Yeah, no, I think the Seahawks, they're coming off a disappointing loss to the Redskins. The Cardinals, I don't think they have enough firepower to keep up with the Seahawks.
Absolutely. Cowboys Falcons.
This is going to be a really, obviously as a Cowboy fan, I want to pick them, but Des Bryant did not practice this week so far. Tyron Smith, the left tackle, has not practiced. Who knows if they're going to have Zeke or not? It's really up in the air. So until they figure out if they're going to have their superstars, I think I have to go with the Falcons.
I'm going to go with the Falcons as well. Playing at home, I think that will get them the win. Saints Bills.
Surprisingly, Saints 6-2, Bills 5-3. I'm going to go with the Saints. The Bills had a horrible loss last Thursday to the New York Jets, so I think the Saints are going to ride with
I'm going to go with the Saints as well. Packers Bears. I'm going to go Bears. Brett Hundley looks terrible as quarterback for the Packers.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bears as well. The Packers offense is non-existent.
Lions and Browns. Easy one. Lions.
Browns are undefeated, right? They're still...
They have won a game.
Or undefeated. They haven't won a game. Undefeated. What am I thinking? I'm sorry. They're going to continue to not win a game.
Titans Bengals.
Titans.
Titans. I'm going to go with Titans as well. Bengals don't look that good this year.
And Andy Dalton, nope.
Steelers, Colts. I'm going to go Steelers. Although that could be a close game, I'm going to go with Steelers.
Yeah, I think the Steelers, they pull this one out. The Colts, to me, Jacoby Brissett is playing well, not enough firepower.
Jets and Buccaneers.
This is an interesting game. Obviously, like we just mentioned, Jets had that big win against the Bills. The Buccaneers lose Jameis Winston for a couple weeks. They're shutting him down, so Ryan Fitzpatrick takes over. I'm going with the Jets.
I'm going to go with Jets, too. Buccaneers look terrible right now. I think they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. Vikings, Redskins.
Ugh. I'm going to go with the Vikings. I can't pick the Redskins. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
I'll go with Vikings as well. I don't like the Redskins as much this year. Although I do love their safety, DJ Swearinger, former Cardinal.
Okay.
Chargers, Jaguars.
Jaguars. This is one of the teams that last couple of years I've been waiting for him to come along, and so far they're playing really well.
Jaguars been by 3. Phil Rivers is going down the field to try to win the game, and they lose. Texans, Rams.
I'm going with the Rams.
Yeah,
the Rams
no
are
way
hot
Tom
right now. I
Savage
will
beats
be
the
at
Rams.
this game this Sunday.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
very,
that's awesome.
very good game. Can't wait. I'm going with the Rams.
Jared Goff going to whoop the Texans.
Yep.
Rams all the way. 49ers, Giants. I mean, who cares? To be honest.
Both of these teams are pretty pathetic. I'm going 49ers. They're at home. I don't know.
Sunday Night Football. As you can hear, the music's playing. That's going to be near the end of the podcast. Sunday Night Football, Patriots, Broncos.
Patriots.
Yeah,
Brock
Brock
starting.
Osweiler, no way. It's the when is Paxton Lynch going to play sweepstakes in
that's not
Denver.
a good thing for Denver.
Patriots all the way. And Monday Night Football, Dolphins and Panthers.
Cam Newton. He's on my fantasy team. I need him to have a big game. Let's go, Cam.
I'm going to go Panthers, but watch out for an upset of the Dolphins. You never know with them. This has been the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Nick Nina.
I'm Jared Smith.
We'll see you guys next week.